It's time to hear it from Harlan. Utah Director of Athletics Mark Harlan takes you behind the scenes with the Utes, the Pac-12, and collegiate athletics. Now here's your host, Mike Lagesholt.
And welcome to the season premiere of the Hear From Harlan podcast. Coming up on our show, we'll look back on a busy start to the fall sports season, which included the opening of the Ken Garff Red Zone at Rice-Eccles Stadium. Haley Farrar of women's soccer drops by for a conversation with Mark, and some major changes have taken place over the summer and early fall in collegiate athletics. Mark will give us his thoughts on those items. Plus, he'll share some details from the new Pac-12 commissioner's visit to our campus at the U last week. Well, Mark, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mike. It's great to see you and have a chance to get everybody caught up on what has been a very active summer and early fall.
You know, Mark, I've heard you speak a few times this fall. You've mentioned every time how good it is to see people in person again. And you and I have done this show the last year and a half remotely over the phone, but here we are in the Wilson Conference Room in the Burbage Center. It just feels good to be back in this room with you and talking about the Utes and getting back to our normal pattern again here a little bit.
Well, it's good to see you as well. And I think that you're absolutely right. You know, it's a very interactive, energetic profession that we're in. And the most important thing is these 600 student athletes that come here every day and you know, chase their dreams. And so to be around them, to be around their coaches, and certainly to be around the staff has been pretty exhilarating, particularly over these last 4 to 6 weeks.
You know, it's been a crazy year and a half, obviously, but we've had a lot going on. I mean, this Ken Garff Red Zone at Rice-Eccles Stadium project has really been something that's consumed us for about 2 years between planning, renderings, construction, and to see it open for the ribbon cutting August 12th, had the first game against Weber State. Won. You guys nailed it. I've talked to people in the community who've been lifelong season ticket holders and now have seats there. They love it. Great job by you and the staff. But let's talk about this. I mean, challenging time. In the pandemic, there were supply shortages. There were all kinds of things that played into getting this thing done on time. It happened. It was great. Just talk about the ribbon cutting and the feedback you've gotten so far on this great new addition to Rice-Eccles Stadium.
Well, I don't want to be cliche, but teamwork makes the dream work. And that's really what I think of when you think about the feedback we're getting. And I go back to Dr. Hill doing a great feasibility study that was sitting on the desk when I arrived 3+ years ago. And I think about the university facility team and the folks from Populous and, of course, the incredible people from Layton Construction and, of course, the Garff family, John and Kathy and Bob and Matt Garff, their vision and just working in this very room. Every week we'd meet with the Garff family in the morning and then the construction team and now to see where it is today. And there was challenges, just like any great thing, you're going to have challenges. And everybody just kept the North Star being that we want this, ready to go for the 21 season. We want to keep people safe. So very proud. It's probably the proudest project I've ever been around because I think of all the people that had to, just stay at such a high level and focus on it. So to have it open in the way it did, from the ribbon cutting, as you said, through the game, the feedback has been really good. To sit in the end zone sometimes is a mindset shift. And so to find people that, enjoyed the game so much from that perspective, and the fact that we sold it out, which is a tribute again to our football program success and the passion that our fans have for it.
Right.
And so fun to get into the waiting list that's been sitting there for a while, and we're already now recreating that waiting list. So it's been a win-win. We still have things we have to finish. Layton Construction's still doing things, and we're still working out all the flow, and we'll probably be doing that most of the fall. But very, very, very happy with where we're at.
I know when Populous came in to talk to our staff about a year and a half ago, they mentioned some of these south end zone or end zone projects look like a spaceship landed at your stadium. This one blends in seamlessly. I mean, you almost can't tell it's new. It was done just so well, but the amenities inside with the club space, the lounge space, everything to a T. So, Mark, again, great job you and the staff to bring this thing home.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it.
All right. Football is already in progress. We got a road game at San Diego State coming up on Saturday. Some more home games coming up. Reminder to fans, digital tickets, download, transfer to your wallet when you come back to see us for Washington State for homecoming. But, Mark, some other sports already underway as well. Volleyball. Already 2 wins over ranked teams. They took down number 22 San Diego at their annual Utah Classic, and then a big win at number 3 Nebraska on Saturday. How about that for Beth Lanier and her company?
Well, just, absolutely picking up where they left off, back-to-back NCAA tournament appearances. Again, just like our women's soccer team, had a short spring season, still got it in the tournament, and then to come back, Danny Drew's electing to come back, for just, all the right reasons, because she loves this place and loves her coach and the staff. So I was sitting at BYU. The game had just gotten started, and we get word that they beat They beat Nebraska, which for our fans that don't know, that's a place you don't win in women's volleyball. They get close to 10,000. It's not unlike what we see in gymnastics here. And so I called Beth right away, and she was actually talking to the team, a definition of bad timing on my part. But she took the call, and the girls were screaming, and I was screaming, and it was just a great moment. And so we'll get them back here for some home games coming up, and I just encourage everybody not to miss it. Since I mentioned the football, obviously our team is off to a 1-1 start. I was down in Provo this last week. I appreciate the fact that it was a tough game for our guys. I always like to say, it had nothing to do with effort. I mean, we worked so hard for that game. The other guys practice too, and every now and then you're going to run into those games where you're not quite at your best and the other team is. But already as we sit and tape this, really proud of the way our guys are responding, really proud of Coach Witt and the staff. And again, if you're in a situation, what you want is a veteran coach who's been through situations before. So I encourage everybody to stay with us. We've got a long season ahead. We're going to learn some things from that situation, and we're going to march forward.
All right, so again, football home for homecoming against Washington State after the road game in San Diego this weekend. Yes, it's early. A lot of football ahead of us. I know they've had some injuries and challenges for everyone with the COVID pandemic and so forth. So stick with them, Utah fans. A lot of season ahead. Women's cross country, men's golf already underway. We'll talk about soccer as well with Haley Farrar, Mark. But 4-3-1 already under first-year head coach Hideki Nakata. Great week for them last week. You went to the BYU game as they hosted the 22nd ranked Cougars, a 0-0 draw, then a nice win over Dixie State here over the weekend.
Yeah, that BYU game was something else. I look forward to talking to Haley about it. It just was a physical, athletic, focused, 90 minutes of soccer, and it was just awesome. And there wasn't a lot of score, but it was such a step up from our last time that we played BYU in the shortened spring season. So very proud of the team to get that kind of result, a tie against a ranked team in BYU. So I think it bodes well as we enter into the gauntlet that is the Pac-12 season, and of course, as typical, we'll open with Stanford coming up this weekend up in Palo Alto. But very proud of Hideki and his staff. They're off to a great start.
All right, so soccer again home Thursday, September 30th against Washington State. Volleyball back home in October as well for some more home competition. Mark, Hall of Fame weekend took place September 1st and 2nd with the Weber State game, and our 2021 class included Lori Baird from volleyball, Anthony Brown from football, Casey Child, former baseball player, Eddie Johnson was the all-time leading rusher for Utah football for 30-some years before he was overtaken a few years ago. Alex Smith, Heisman Trophy finalist, and Amy Timmel-Hogue, who is our current head softball coach for softball, was a heck of a player back in the day. Those 6 were inducted. Your thoughts on the Hall of Fame class and what's always a fun weekend with that group? It
was great, and it was such a great way to start the whole big fall weekend there. We had it on Wednesday night, the night before the Weber State game. Just such a neat group of people, and also it was fun because we had got everyone together again. A lot of our donors were there, but always an honor to help put those incredible folks into the greatest honor of Utah athletics in our Hall of Fame, and really appreciated all of them. Of course, to have Amy, one of our own there, coaching, go into the Hall of Fame. Now I realize I have to go through 2 people now to talk to her that she's a Hall of Famer. So maybe we'll cut that to 1 person here coming up. But it was a great night. They were so engaged the next day when we introduced them that night, and particularly Alex signing autographs for what probably came out there in the rain delay.
Yeah.
90 minutes, but he was so excited to be back along with the others. It was just a great night and great weekend.
All right. On the coaching front, Mark, you've been busy this summer. We talked about Hideki Nakata being hired as the soccer head coach. We talked about him in previous shows, but over the summer, Gary Henderson promoted to take over as the head baseball coach. He was the National Coach of the Year in 2018. On an interim basis, he coached Mississippi State to the College World Series, and also Andrew McMahon named the new lacrosse head coach after 10 years running the program at Robert Morris. Your thoughts on those 2 hires?
Well, let's start with Gary. Unbelievable interest in this position. Bill did such a great job, and having such great, I don't know. It's hard to say. That program is just so solid, and they were always doing the right stuff on and off the field. And of course, Bill and I go way back, and so when he decided that it was time to retire and enjoy some things, he was really pro on Gary, and I was too. And then I really studied Gary and his background and talked to ADs that had worked with him. At the same time, we had this other really good pool of people. So Gary just won the job flat out. Did, his passion, his vision, his experience. I think what he did at Mississippi State as an interim coach who took over barely at the start of the season, and it was all this turmoil at a very high-pressured place, and took him all the way, to Omaha. His work at Kentucky was epic. So really excited, and I just appreciate his start. The student athletes are really excited. And as far as Andrew coming in for lacrosse, I mean, that was a late change here as we start the season. And Andrew, it's fun to get a steal. Every now and then you get a steal. So he's come to us from Robert Morris, which is in the same league that we are now in lacrosse. And he's won that league. He's taken the team to the tournament, but he was looking for a new challenge, and he just rose up above some great candidates. So Andrew's here now. And the lacrosse team's really excited to have him here, and he'll have a little bit of time because obviously the season doesn't get going in the spring, but we're excited to have both of them in these leadership roles.
Yeah, we'll be excited for lacrosse. They go to the ASA next year, as you mentioned. Andrew won that league when he was at Robert Morris. So all the best to Gary and Andrew as they get their career started here at Utah. Well, as we talked about, women's soccer off to a great start. They play number 22 BYU to draw, defeated Dixie State. One of their team captains, Haley Farrar, drops by to chat with Martin when we come back in just a moment on the Hear It From Harlan podcast.
Time now for Utah's head man to catch up with one of Utah's star student athletes. Once again, here's Utah Athletics Director Mark Harlan on the Hear It From Harlan podcast.
Well, as always, the best part of the podcast is when we have an opportunity to talk to a fabulous student athlete, and we certainly have that today. Haley Farrar from our soccer team is here, and she's going to get us updated on the season, her experiences here at the University of Utah. And as typical with our student athletes, she is just right off the practice field, sitting down with me. Haley, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Super excited.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the season so far. You guys are right in the thick of it. Women's soccer always starts our whole department off every year. You guys are multiple games in. So how are we feeling about the season so far?
I'm just really excited. I think from the start of this season, throughout the summer, there was just this buzz of energy throughout the team. Just ready to go. Obviously, the spring season was very different than normal. And so coming off of that, I think we were just really looking forward to having a fresh start. And I'm feeling really good about where our team's at. We've grown a lot in the past, month or so that we've been together with our whole coaching staff. It's super exciting.
Well, let's dig in a little bit at that, because you have some really unique circumstances as you and the team began the season. And as you alluded to, you guys were supposed to start in the fall. Last year, you got moved to the spring, as I've told your team in the beginning of the year, and I told the same thing to volleyball. You guys had to hold on all year, arguably the most affected student athletes in this whole process. You play a spring season, then you got to turn around and you got to play. So let's start with that one. How has that been mentally and physically to have such a quick turnaround?
It was definitely a challenge. I think it was exciting because season is so fun and it's just such a great time. But at the same time, you have to be so mentally locked in for season. And so when you come off of, a spring season that in many ways is not normal, and then you have to just hop right back into one, it's definitely, mentally taxing and physically taxing. But it was just too exciting to have a normal season that we just, we were able to turn it back on right away and get back after it.
I like what you said there, because I think that verified what I often think. I mean, in season's the coolest part, right? I mean, that's what you guys always work for that moment. And so I guess that makes a lot of sense. Let's jump back into it. But I think what I find fascinating about it is you also had to integrate this freshman class, right? You had, and we'll get to the coaching transition in a minute, but then you had this freshman class coming in, and you being a senior. Explain to me a little bit how you brought that group along so fast.
Yeah, so it was kind of interesting because we, in some ways, had two freshman classes because last year's class didn't get a true fall season. And so, we were kind of trying to incorporate them as well. Throughout the whole COVID season, we were pretty much always with our roommates. We didn't get a lot of just team time. And so it was almost double the freshman class trying to incorporate them. And, I think this summer we worked really hard to do a lot of team building activities. We had our full captain's week where we were just constantly with each other. And, at a certain point, you kind of are like, wow, we've been together for the past 2 weeks straight.
A lot of time.
Yes, definitely. But I think ultimately it was for the betterment of our team. We just got really close and spent a lot of time trying to dig deeper and get to know each other off of the soccer field.
That's great to hear. I think a lot of our teams here, just for all our listeners, it's been the mental. I mean, there's always the physical challenge to compete at this level, which is just amazing what you and your teammates and others go through. But it's that mental piece of it that certainly during COVID. Well, then you had another another obviously transition. And then, of course, Rich moved on, and Hideki came into the program. So you had this spring season, you had COVID, and then you had a coaching change. And I've always felt for students that's just a tough thing to go through, right? I mean, to have to go through a change like that. So why don't you update me how you're feeling about it and how Hideki has come in and really how is he leading the program to this point?
Oh man, in many, many ways. I feel so grateful and so excited to have the staff that we have. Hideki is, I've said this multiple times, but the moment that he was on that Zoom call, surprising us that he was our new head coach, everyone was just like full of excitement and in our group message, so stoked about it. And I think it's just brought this new spark to our team. I think the standard is higher. I think there's just so much honesty and communication, and we're all straightforward with each other, and it just makes for a really competitive high level, but at the same time, an atmosphere where you feel really supported and cared about, and that you can always go to the coaching staff and say, hey, what needs to be fixed? What do I need to do? That kind of thing. And you'll get, a really honest response. So it's truly just been such an amazing season so far. And I feel really, really thankful to be a part of it and have had him come along.
Well, that's great to hear. In the interview process, you guys were so good because, again, it's a challenging transition, and particularly in that interim period between Rich leaving and then, who's going to come in. And I remember after my interview with Hideki, I'm like, okay, that was an elite 1 hour. It felt like it was a minute, and I looked down and it was an hour. And I remember that Zoom, day, and just was excited to be able to, have Charmel and I introduce him to you guys, because I thought he really portrayed a vision and a way that he would do it. Sometimes you get the vision, but you don't hear the how to. And so it's so gratifying to hear that he's been able to come in, and I love his staff, obviously. So that's great to hear. Well, let's get off the soccer. No, wait, we're not going to get off the soccer field because there is one game I need to talk to you about. Yeah. So last Thursday night, I made sure I had all my work done, and I went up to watch the rival game. And as I was telling you off the air, that was about as good of a soccer game I've seen between two teams. And I know it's 0-0, but gosh, the physicality, the hustle, and I got to give our friends down south credit too. But you guys battled. So just walk me through that night, because 0-0 result against a top 25 team, but walk me through that. Yeah,
I mean, obviously we knew going into it, it was going to be a game full of emotion, full of physicality. That's how it is every year. And so we expected that. And I think our team just did a phenomenal job of fighting to the very last minute. Obviously soccer with the, being able to end in a tie is not always the most satisfying thing. Definitely would have loved to get that win, but it was just, such a high energy night. And I'm just really proud of our team for fighting through.
Let's just be honest. I mean, last spring they took it to us, and to see in a few short months the change was just, for the director over here, definitely. It was just really awesome to see that kind of progress. We would have got them in PKs.
Yeah, definitely.
It would have been over early in PKs. So let's talk a little bit off the pitch, so to speak. Obviously, the pride of West High School. You come here. Talk to me about the decision to come here. Obviously, it's always fun when we get the local talent to come, but that always doesn't happen. It's always something you have to work through. But a little bit about your decision to come here.
Yeah, so I'm not actually originally from Salt Lake, but I did go to high school here. So it was somewhat new, this area, but then also I had spent enough time that I really grew to love Salt Lake. And then, as I looked closer into the Utah soccer program, I couldn't not give myself a shot to be in the Pac-12, which Absolutely. I think you hear that from a lot of student athletes in the Pac-12. It's just a once in a lifetime opportunity, and it's unreal. So I really wanted to compete in the Pac-12 at that high level. The city meets mountains kind of thing that we have going on here on campus. I just love the environment around Salt Lake. And I just really felt that it was the perfect place for me to pursue a high quality education and then also be a part of one of the greatest conferences. I would say the greatest conference.
Well, I mean, if you look across at soccer, I mean, you know, every time you guys line up, it's against a top 20 type opponent. And I agree with you. And I think that's everything you get here at Utah. But the best want to play against the best, right?
Exactly.
And now you're a psychology major, correct? Mm-hmm. And you're wrapping that up. So, I know you've got a good year ahead. So I don't want to act like it's tomorrow, it's over. But talk to me about what's next for you.
Yeah, so I'm wrapped up with psychology, and I'm actually adding an environmental sustainability and studies.
Of course
degree.
you are. Another underachieving student athlete.
So I'm partway through with that, so I'm looking to finish that. I'm kind of super senior. I don't really know where I'm at.
Super senior. I loved it. I came up with that phrase.
You did?
I did. I was the first to use it. Now the industry's using it. Now you're using it.
Now I'm using it.
Should have CC'd that thing.
Yeah, you should have. So I actually have eligibility for next season as well. So I'm planning to use that. And then, So can't get rid of me yet.
Absolutely not. I love it.
Yeah. And then honestly, I'm just kind of focusing on that right now, just finishing my degree and focusing on these next season, these 2 seasons in front of me, and kind of just trying to roll with it, just see what comes.
I mean, that's why I got this big smile on my face, because you're going to be back. And for our listeners that don't understand, this super senior was out of COVID. You get an extra year of eligibility. And what we're going to see when this goes through this cycle is a bunch of our students walking out with master degrees. I mean, doctorate degrees. It's going to be unbelievable to see the transformational opportunity. And we've had a lot of our students want to take advantage of that, which of course is very gratifying for all of us here. So there's no rush. You've got this year, you got the next year ahead. You've talked about the transition. So you're feeling really comfortable about stuff. Well, I want to thank you, right? Again, I think it's really hard to be a student athlete at any institution. But I think when you have to go through, I was just thinking about your career. We're not even playing on the same field when you started as a freshman. Heck, even that has changed, right? You've gone through that. You've gone through a coaching change. You've gone through COVID, and you've just stayed focused, and now you're even pursuing another degree. It's really inspiring for a lot of people when we hear these stories, but particularly your story. So thank you for taking the time, and have a great rest of season. I guess we'll close with this. You guys are coming out of non-conference. So why don't you preview the rest of the way for us as we start heading into conference season?
Yeah. So this coming Thursday, we play Utah State at their place, 5 p.m. The following week on Friday, we go to Stanford to start our Pac-12 season. Let's go. And then we're back home for our Pac-12 home openers against Washington State and Washington.
That's awesome. So one more non-con in-state rival, so to speak, and then get after it. And why not start at Stanford? Why not? I mean, let's go. Let's play the best. The best want to play the best. Well, thank you, Haley, so much for coming. Really appreciate it, and good luck the rest of the way.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You bet.
And welcome back to the season debut of the Here from Harlan podcast. Great to catch up with Haley Farrar, the women's soccer program. And Mark, just her thoughts. She was so grateful and echoed the team sentiment when they found out Hideki Nakata was going to be their head coach. They met him on a Zoom meeting, which we do everything via Zoom, it seemed like, for a long stretch. But they were just so pumped to have some new direction and kind of a change in energy. And so far, so good. Already 4-3-1 record for him. Just your thoughts on Haley's comments during her interview with you.
Well, it's always so fun to be able to share why it's so awesome to be around students. And, Haley has gone through so much, but she's so grateful, which, she doesn't have to be, but it's just awesome to see that. And of course, when you go through a coaching change, which is so challenging, it's also gratifying to hear that it's going so well. Hideki was real known in the Pac-12, one of the elite top coaches, kind of the next up head coach in our league, and we were fortunate to get him, but they all knew him, and I think that really contributed to the fact that they were so excited. But she's great and typical, right? She comes in here right off the field, and then right when she's done, she runs off to go to the strength and conditioning room, and then she runs off to get her second degree.
Right.
But that was breaking news for me to hear that she was coming back as a super senior. So I'm still smiling from that, because she's an elite. She's an elite person. And it's so great to have her back.
Yeah, great leader. By the way, you came up with super senior. I hadn't heard that before, Mark.
I'm taking it. I'm convinced that I one day just accidentally said it. I'm like, boy, that makes sense. And then our compliance people, and now I hear everybody talk about it. I'm sure I'm dead wrong on that, but I'll take it.
You know, Mark, the next time you have an idea like that, reach out to me and Mike Gilliland running the show here on the board and let us know.
You guys can literally broadcast.
We'll get some copyrights and help you out. We'll take our cut. You get yours. Everyone wins.
You guys can have it. You guys can have it.
Well,
I love it.
Listen, it's on the podcast. Now it's official record that you're the guy to come up with this. So we're going to run with that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Some serious topics now, Mark, as we turn to what's been going on. And you and I are around the same age. I can't remember a period of time between COVID and national level change, conference level change, everything going on with student athletes and their rights and just looking at things to do things differently. I can't remember a time that's been as crazy as this past year has been. From your chair, your thoughts on just sort of the landscape and the things that are going on right now, both on the national and conference levels that impacts us on this campus.
Well, you're right. It's been a very active summer. I think it's fair to say that we knew it was coming. We knew a lot of things were going to kind of collide during this summer of 21. Of course, the first of that being, name, image, and likeness legislation that we knew July 1 was, for many years, going to be a critical day because that's when some of the state laws were going to go into effect that would supersede NCAA legislation and allow the student athletes to monetize. Of course, Utah didn't have a state law, but we were going to go forward with whatever made sense with what the NCAA, provided, or Pac-12. So fast forward, here we are now in September, and I've been real pleased with the way the University of Utah is, integrating this new normal for our kids. And so go back a little bit. The NCAA said two things as you launch this, particularly if you're in a state that doesn't have a law. One, can't be used for inducement in recruiting, which makes all the sense in the world. And two, it can't be a pay-for-play situation. In other words, entering into contracts that, pay you for touchdowns or, perfect tens or whatever it might be. So knowing this was coming for a long time, Charmel Green, our fabulous deputy athletic director, really worked hard with compliance and others, and we developed an incredible partnership with the Lassonde Institute, which is a part of the Eccles School of Business, and we created Elevate U collaboratively. And Elevate U is just as simple as this. You don't have to be a part of the business school. You don't have to be part of Lassonde, but if you're a student athlete and you want to learn about brand development and how you enter this space and the opportunities, then we've got an incredible group of people that are there to help you. And we've seen our students go over to Lassonde and really engage. And again, a lot of them don't have a lot of time, so it's going to be dependent on that. And they can go out and do these contracts. And then we look at the contracts, make sure there's no eligibility issues on those two things I mentioned. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing activity. We're seeing a lot of our young people get involved in lessons, which are now legal, to teach in the community. We've seen our student athletes do some media deals. I think you've seen the Britton Covey and Nick Ford and perhaps a couple others that are now doing media deals, which are just fabulous. That they deserve that. I've always been a big proponent of it. So we're marching forward. We're keeping an eye on the landscape. We've said to ourselves that we're not wedded to any particular path, but we're going to make sure our kids have the greatest opportunities. So it's a learning process for them. It's a learning process for us, but I think it's fair to say that we'll have a great opportunity for our student athletes going forward to not only monetize, but also help them with the educational process. When you do these deals, there's tax implications, there's timing obligations. And so we want to be here to help them along the way. Because I remember, Mike, when I was back 19, 20 and trying to look at, things like contracts, I needed some assistance. And so as you would expect of our students, athletes are way smarter than I was back at that age. So they're managing it well, but we're going to continue to grow, work with Lassonde, work with the available rules that are in front of us and march forward.
They are a savvy generation with social media, and you just see them kind of understanding how to market themselves, but they got to be careful. It's a different space for them. So great support from the Elevate U program. It's a different world for them. And sort of along with that, Mark, the NCAA Board of Governors announced in late July they will convene to have a special constitutional convention in November to examine and propose changes to the NCAA's constitution. A committee has been formed to look into this, and just a lot of change, Mark. As a guy in your chair as Utah AD, as you talk to your constituents around the country, where do you see this going in November or maybe beyond this calendar year with this?
Well, we're under, not even seismic change. If there's a bigger word than seismic,
right,
insert it. It's a moment of time that we'll look back 20, 30 years from now and we'll think of that. Obviously, the Alston case, without spending too much time on that, was a 9-0 vote by the justices that suggested that the NCAA needs to relook at their model. And there's a lot of different things there. They also said some things that our model is good. It just needs to be cleaned up. And that's why name, image, and likeness thing could go forward, as we just talked about. But now we have to really look at what's the best way to govern ourselves going forward. The collegiate model, I think, is a good one. It's been around for 100 plus years. I think it's served the student athlete. I think it's served the community, and it's served the university in a really good way. I'm a big proponent of that, right? So what can we do going forward to keep the collegiate model healthy for both the institutions, for the students, for the coaches, for everybody, but also get away from some of the bureaucracy that I think has caused us to not move forward the way we should and not evolve. So to answer your question, it's hard for me to predict. I think that we're going to see more of an alignment of schools that are similar. I think that's important. We've seen some of that over the last few years with the autonomy, Power 5 type governance. I think we're going to see a little bit more of that. I think the conferences are going to get a little bit more in governing themselves. The NCAA is really good at running championships. As a matter of fact, they're elite. They run great championships. We have to have a level playing field. So who would handle compliance? Is that better at the conference level? Is it better in a new structure? The Constitutional Convention is a little overwhelming to think about how that will go, and it's 3 divisions, and so we're kind of have to figure out, well, how are we going to do that? Are there parallel paths that we need to study and look at? But here's the thing, as I've told our students and coaches, just focus in on what's in front of you. I'll handle that. My staff will handle that. We're going to figure it all out. We're going to make sure Utah's in a great spot. Just control your controllables and compete, and we'll see where this all goes. At the end of the day, college sports is going to survive. It's just going to look a little different.
Yeah. You're right. They do a great job of championships, and they've been a great central governing force, but just with all the changes and great time to look at things.
Remember, Mike, not to say it's a governance program that all the universities are part of.
Right.
It's the NCAA always gets this. We are the NCAA.
Yes.
And so I'm on the football oversight committee. I can tell you 7 other staffers on various different committees. It's all these committees. And it's like a battle. It's like an aircraft carrier to move it sometimes. Doesn't mean there's not really good people thinking about a lot of different things, but when you're serving thousands of schools, some have budgets of $5, some have budgets of $150 million,
Yeah.
And so we just have to figure out a way to shrink it up in these various categories so that everybody gets what they need, but it may cause some hardships as some break away. But we'll see what happens, and we'll continue to work on it, and Utah will be in the middle of all of it.
So we had that at the national level, conference level. We had some shakeups with Texas and Oklahoma saying, hey, we're going to go to the SEC. And there were some concerns from every Power 5 conference, even Group of 5, about does our membership stay stable? Is there more change coming? And so since then, the Pac-12 Conference formed an alliance with the ACC and the Big Ten. You talked about conferences maybe kind of grouping together in like groups that have common interests. To me, that was a first sign of maybe what we could see more of. But the alliance sounds wonderful. These institutions, a lot of similar interests. I like the way that shook up and came together. Just your thoughts on this alliance and just sort of the talk and conversation about conferences and Power 5, Group of 5, and what could be down the road with possible more changes, or do you feel this alliance and more of these could maybe give some more stability to the conferences?
Well, on the alliance itself, I think it's a great move, and I give a lot of credit to our new commissioner, Commissioner Kliavkoff, who I think came in July 1, and we joke with them, hey, nothing's going on. Why don't you just join the party over here? And I think it was really him working closely with Commissioner Warren, and then, of course, Jim at the ACC, and they kind of came together. And it's fair to say there was a certain response to that, but these conversations have been going on for a little bit. Maybe they were accelerated with some of the realignment things. But at the end of the day, you got 41 schools, a lot of AAU schools, high academic, of which Utah is a part of that club. And we kind of operate the same way for the most part across the collective. The scheduling piece, we can talk about in a second, that's kind of the headline piece. But what I'm most excited about is the other important piece, which is the governance piece. It's like you said, we're in these choppy waters. How do we collaborate, work together, talk through issues that are similar on our campuses, that are similar in the conference offices to best shape what the future is, and maybe in some ways create the agenda for those kind of things. So I think it's great. The scheduling piece is going to take a little bit more time. I think we'll see some more activity in basketball quicker than we would do in football. Obviously, what could change that in football is if the Big Ten and the Pac-12, agree to roll back one conference game and go from 9 to 8. I'm a big-time supporter of that. I think the evidence is in that 9th game has caused us issues in our conference. And the Big Ten is looking at that hard. Our commissioner has been vocal about this. I have too. If we roll back to 8 games, if our media partners, because we're in a contract, they'd have to approve that with us, then you could see an immediate change where a Big Ten team or an ACC team can move into that slot. So be on the lookout for that as that work goes through. So I like the fact that we can create alliance games eventually. But I want to go back to the first point, governance, Monday through Friday conversations with like-minded institutions from the presidents, chancellors, ADs, and others. And I think also the way we treat our athletes, obviously the Pac-12 leads the way with medical care 4+ years after the competition. Those others are looking at it, so how can the student athletes have their best experience? How can we share best practices? So I'm excited about it. I also know some of the fans are like, but the scheduling is going to take a while. It could accelerate, as I mentioned. We'll see what happens there. And some of this basketball stuff we're talking about, like these mini tournaments, could be really cool, not only for our student athletes who would love to do that kind of stuff, but I think it will help in our TV negotiations. So I'm excited about it. There's a lot of work to do. We owe it, and I've told this to the commissioner, and he gets it, to really explain this and update to our various fan bases as we go forward, because it can be a little complicated.
Yeah, but a great start. As you mentioned, 41 schools, a lot of similarities, and you have basically from West Coast to East Coast schools involved. George Kliavkoff came to our campus last week, and I'll talk to you about that in a moment, but he mentioned this idea of having the ACC, Big Ten, Pac-12 play football games, a triple header every Saturday involving those schools that would basically run all the networks throughout the day, and not just in the non-conference season in September. He's talking from September to November, and the matches would not be determined until the previous season was done. So you have a chance to take your best Big Ten team, your best ACC, best Pac-12, match them up.
Not necessarily best, but because you can't have, let's say, Clemson and Ohio State playing every year. I don't know if those two schools would raise their hand to support that. But you're spot on. It's this creative approach to say when we create these openings, to have the football folks come together, and then the ADs look at it in January and say, okay, how many returning starters are back from this squad?
Right.
How did they do last year? How's their recruiting project? And then go in the lab and create these matchups. And then, like you said, do it not just all in September, roll it out.
Yeah.
I mean, that's innovative stuff. And we learned in COVID, you don't have to schedule a football game 14 years in advance anymore. Heck, we didn't know we were going to play the Huskies last year until, Tuesday? And we went up there on a Friday because the TV trucks were up there. I still don't know why that wasn't a home game, but that's a whole other matter. So I appreciate George. You mentioned he was on campus. Commissioner Kliavkoff came out here last week, and gosh, he just dug in for 2 days and had it. I've talked to him since he's left. I spent a lot of time while I was here. He just loved his visit here, Mike. I mean, he got to meet so many staffers like yourself, our comm team, our performance team. But the highlight for him was just really the barbecue he had with our student athlete leadership group. And he just is still talking about it because it was a great setting. It was right on the patio of our Huntsman basketball facility. He just got into real talk. What are they concerned about? He's a great listener, which I love about him. He's very transparent. And so it was good getting to know him personally. I think he's going to be great for this conference. You can know the TV stuff. I mean, that's his wheelhouse. But now he's really ingrained on just the campuses and what makes us tick. And so it was a great visit. Really appreciate him. Our new president, President Randall, who's just been terrific. They got to spend some time, our chair of our trustees, et cetera. So good visit. And I think George is going to be great for all of us.
I was very impressed when I met with him. He met with our communications staff for about a half hour and wanted to have some time with us. And I was easier on him than I am you with the questions, but I asked about television. And he said, you know what? We've got contracts for 3 years we can't touch. They are ironclad, and he would like to do some things but just can't. But he was very transparent with our group, and you just tell it the gears are grinding already, and the fact he's trying to get to every campus in our league by end of September so he knows
he'll get there.
People
he left here and then and went right back to Vegas where he still got a house. And 6 a.m. he was up in Corvallis, and then, of course, he went to go watch the great Ohio State-Oregon game. So, yeah, he's the real deal. And like you said, it's turning. And I think by the time we get there, I do want to just close on this as we talk about George. It's an important reminder our listeners. Those TV deals are locked up.
Yeah.
And he does not have a magic wand. I don't either. Distribution of the league, of the Pac-12 network is what it is. I also agree with what he said when we sat together in the press conference. The quality of the Pac-12 network, both from a game production standpoint and from the other things that they do, are elite. And I think they're better than any of the Power Five. It's a shame the distribution isn't where it is, although it's more available now than ever was from a streaming standpoint. But I think he's right. And we've taken so much money away from the Pac-12 network, and they're still producing great stuff. So encourage everybody to find it, go on our website and try to find it. But we're 3 years away from being able to change that dynamic.
All right, time to bring it back to campus here, Mark, as we talked about first some national and then some conference level issues. Let's go back to last year. Everyone understands the revenue game, football season tickets, and attendance for fans. Last year was our normal year. There was a budget shortfall. And obviously, the department kept running. You and the staff did a great job keeping us afloat, keeping things moving along. But there's a budget shortfall from last year at some point. You got to figure that out. So as you look forward to this year, really the next 3 years or so, how does that budget shortfall impact your department and your ability to run things as you want to in the next couple of years? And how do you figure out the equation with the money out, so to speak?
Well, let's start off with something that's really, really important. Last year was really hard on our student athletes, and we know that. And they persevered, and they did a great job. But it was really hard on our staff. Everybody in the organization had to furlough. Some had to furlough longer than I ever would have dreamed any organization could have endured. And it was hard. And I will forever, for the rest of my life, not just career, be so grateful for so many people making that sacrifice, because it was just hard. Mm-hmm. But that type of commitment enabled us to be better than we thought, right? We had other austerity type situations we had to go through. The fact that our coaches didn't recruit off campus, that's as it should be, a very high expense item for us. So we were able to manage that. We did better on the expenses than we projected. And of course, we got some football games in and got most of the basketball games. So when the dust cleared, we're about $32 million deficit last fiscal year, which is hard to even say out loud, right? Because this place is always finished on the right side of the ledger and been able to build, a little bit of reserves. So to your question, one of the reasons why it's just so awesome to be at the University of Utah is its teamwork. And the teamwork comes with the administration that I have the honor to serve on the cabinet with. And they took the debt of the various different, places that kind of got hammered during COVID. And of course, that's residential hall, that's some medical things, athletics. It's certainly our friends in the fine arts. And our great CFO, Kathy Anderson, for the university, kind of packaged that debt and got a great rate. So we have an obligation to work on that debt, but everyone understands we need time to move forward and get back on our feet and get on the other side of COVID. But what's going to happen here is it's not going to hold us back. It's a commitment from, obviously President Randall now to the trustees. They're proud of this program. We don't have any room to step back, and we won't. It's not fair to our students, our coaches, and certainly our great donors and supporters. So I've always been honored to work here, but watching the teamwork come together to manage this debt going forward, knowing that there's an obligation to a degree for us to take care of that. It was something we didn't cause. But the university gets that too. So it's a teamwork effort, and it's not going to affect our ability to continue our rise in this conference and then nationally as well.
And that leads to my next question. The Ken Garff Red Zone project at Rice-Eccles was a couple years in the making. It's done. Now you look at finances, look at some other things on the to-do list in terms of facilities, large-scale projects. Where do you stand with some other things in the next year or so on your to-do list?
Well, we're never done. Right. Just like we don't expect our coaches to ever stop coaching and our kids to never stop graduating and competing. It's the same as we look forward. We have a lot of things that we're keeping an eye out. We do have some feasibility studies that are either, wrapping up or have finished up. I think some of the things that are on my mind, again, without any kind of timeline, would be really looking at the Huntsman Center. What are things that we can do? We've already learned in one game what that kind of premium seating can do with the Red Zone. Is there opportunities for premium seating? Is there opportunity to maybe shrink Huntsman Center a little bit? Just don't tell Tom Varden that. To really make the environment just maniacal for our sports. Baseball is still a riddle, trying to figure out the best path forward for a program that I'm in love with college baseball. I want to get that right. So we're looking at that. Indoor space, we have the great Eccles indoor facility, but we need to get some more indoor space. So these are some things. We're trying to wrap up our gymnastics renovation and get some final gifts in for that. So we always have things that we're working on, and we always have great folks that want to come forward and support. So we'll be working on those things along with obviously, always looking at our football situation. What else can we do in their practice facilities? What else do we need to do in the stadium? We're not done in Rice-Eccles. There's still things that I would like to see working with our friends at Auxiliary Services for improvement for everybody. So we're not sitting back now that we're done. We're just transitioning to the next thing. But we'll be very communicative to our base about kind of what the things that we're thinking about and what's up next.
Scott Call, our deputy AD on the external side, told me during a Facebook Live at the stadium in August they're looking at some new video boards for the north end zone. He was public with that, so I brought it up here. But as you mentioned, the process is not done at that venue.
Yeah, I think those video boards on that side is something that I've noticed right away. Obviously we created this incredible one on the south and the north, you got those two boards. Can we do a little bit more there? We're also looking into that. Thank you for reminding me of that. With tracks going under there, It's kind of an interesting challenge that's unique to us. I don't think that many have trains going that close. Maybe the old Yankee Stadium with the Bronx, so we got to work with that. But that's okay. The tracks is awesome. It brings 30% of our folks to the stadium, so we love it. But yeah, these are all fun things to partner and take to the market and see what we have. Anything to improve our student athlete experience and fan experience, we're going to take a good, hard, serious look at.
Well, Mark, it's been a challenging year and a half, and I know this pandemic isn't completely behind us. We're still dealing with some things, but great to be with you in person. Great job to you and your staff shepherding us through this challenging time, and we'll see you in about 4 to 5 weeks with our next show.
I look forward to it, Mike. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. That's Mark Harlan, our AD. That will do it for our show. Thanks to Mike Gilliland for his technical expertise. Also, thanks to Haley Farrar from Women's Soccer for dropping by. And thank you for joining us. For Mark Harlan, I'm Michael Agasholt. Until next time, shalom, everybody.
This has been the Hear It From Harlan podcast. Subscribe and listen all year long as we keep you up to date on Utah athletics.